Tang Dynasty is a golden age of Chinese poetry. Poetry was made an essential part of civil service examination and became something of national pursuit. The number of Tang poems collected in Quan Tang Shi, or the complete Shi poetry of the Tang, is staggering. Nearly 49,000 poems by 2,200 poets. The Shi poetry reached its apex of development during the Tang, marked in large measure by the rise of a heavily regulated type of Shi poetry, noted for its strict syntactic, structural, and tonal rules. This new type of poetry began to be called recent style poetry in order to set it apart from the earlier unregulated poetry. As if, for the sake of symmetry, the existing term ancient poetry or ancient style poetry was broadened to designate all unregulated genres of poetry, produced either before or during the Tang. One major category of recent style poetry is regulated verse, or 律诗, with a fixed length of 8 lines. But its variant 排律, extended regulated verse, has a longer length, ranging from 10 all the way up to about 300 lines. Regulated verse is further divided by line length into 2 types, pentasyllabic and heptasyllabic. 律诗 is undoubtedly one of the most complicated kinds of poetry in the world. In writing a 律诗 poem, a poet must strictly follow complex, interlocked sets of rules for word choice, syntax, structure, as well as tonal patterning. Using a famous poem by Du Fu as an example, I will explain this set of rules and lay the groundwork for more close reading of the 律诗 in the next episodes. The introduction of mandatory sets of rules radically changed the dynamic of poetry writing. The challenge faced by a 律诗 poet was not just to express himself or herself, but do so with self-imposed severe constraints in practically all formal aspects. This may be very well compared to dancing with shackled feet. Inferior 律诗 poets could easily become prisoners of all the formal rules and turn their works into trivial language game. But in the hands of great poets, 律诗 could become a most effective means of achieving the time-honored Chinese poetic ideal, to convey what lies beyond words and image. The poem chosen to demonstrate the complex 律诗 rule is Spring Scene, written by Du Fu in March 757. About 9 months earlier, the capital city of Chang'an had fallen into the hands of the rebel general An Lushan. Du Fu had been captured and briefly detained by the rebel troops. This poem about his war-torn country and family is one of the best known and the most frequently recited of pentasyllabic 律诗 poems.
Spring Scene. The country is broken, but mountains and rivers remain. The city enters spring. Grass and trees have grown thick. Feeling the time, flowers shed tears. Hating separation, a bird startles the heart. Beacon fires span over 3 months. A family letter equals 10,000 taels of gold. My white hairs, as I scratch them, grow more sparse, simply becoming unable to hold hairpins.
Reading this translation, an English reader may not find the kind of poetic greatness he or she would encounter in Shakespeare, William Wordsworth, or John Keats. There's no profound philosophical or religious contemplation, nor astonishing flight of imagination, nor dazzling display of poetic diction. Nonetheless, as I shall demonstrate, Du Fu's Spring Scene deserves no less acclaim. The poetic greatness of Du Fu is of an entirely different kind. To appreciate it fully, we must go beyond English translation and find out how the poem was composed and read in the original. To begin, let us look at the word-for-word translation of the poem and consider its use of words and images. Here, listeners are encouraged to look at the text given on our website, howtoreadchinesepoetry.com. Reading the word-for-word translation, we are first struck by the extraordinary lexical economy, a total of only 40 words. Many literary critics and scholars contend that the lexical economy stems from the non-inflectional nature of the Chinese language. Inflection refers to the variation in words used to depict the relationship of tense, voice, gender, number, case, etc. in an alphabetical language like English. By contrast, in Chinese, these complex relationships are expressed by means of a rather small number of empty words, 虚字, with the aid of the context and semantic rhythm. Unencumbered by inflectional variations, Chinese is far more economical than the Western language in its use of words. However, to attribute the lexical economy of Tang-regulated verse solely to the Chinese language itself is not entirely convincing. The rise of this condensed poetic form also has much to do with the evolution of the Chinese poetic tradition. In a pentasyllabic regulated verse, 40 words could do so much, largely because most of them are imagistic content words that have an actual and usually visualizable referent. Thanks to their repeated and innovative use over the past millennium, these content words have become imbued with various feelings and thoughts, and could evoke touching scenes of history or fiction in the minds of an informed reader. As shown by the word-for-word translation, this poem is made up overwhelmingly of content words, 36 out of 40. These content words produce vivid images of following kinds. For tangible things, we have grass, wood, flower, tear, birds, etc. For general scene, we have country, mountain, river, city, spring. For concrete action, we have shed, startle, scratch, hole. For indicating mental condition, we have the verb feel, hate. For indicating physical condition, we have words like broken, remain, thick, separation, span, etc. For indicating temporal conditions and quantities, we have time, 3, month, 10,000, etc. The 4 remaining words are all empty words, 虚字, that have no meaning in themselves and perform only syntactical functions. Such a lopsided ratio between content and empty words is characteristic of regulated verse in general, and of the Tang-regulated verse in particular. Having only 40 words to work with, a pentasyllabic 律诗 poet often sought to maximize the use of imagistic content words, while keeping empty words to a minimum. The conspicuous absence of personal pronoun is another noteworthy feature apparent in the word-for-word translation. Contrary to the assertion by some scholars, the absence of personal pronoun is not characteristic of all Chinese poetic genres. For instance, the pronoun I appears profusely in many Han Wei, Yue Fu, and Gu Si poems. Only in the Tang-regulated verse do we begin to observe an almost uniform exclusion of personal pronouns, especially that of the lyrical I. The disappearance of the lyrical I produced a further liberating effect on the reader. Thanks to the absence in Chinese of inflectional markings of time and space, Chinese readers enjoy much more freedom than readers of inflected languages in situating the depicted poetic experience. Moreover, with the lyrical I gone, the Chinese reader can easily enter the role of the poet and vicariously reenact his process of poetic creation. In consequence, the dynamics of reading is drastically changed from passive reception to active recreation, as we shall see shortly. For a reader familiar with Western modernist poetry, it is not hard to see that the three features just noted, lexical economy, maximization of imagistic appeal, and the minimal use of non-imagistic words, are practically the same aesthetic ideal pursued by imagistic poets like Ezra Pound and William Carlos Williams. Indeed, the word-for-word translation of Springsteen may seem at the first glance to resemble an imagist poem marked by a jumble of disjointed images. However, although the two traditions seem to share similar aesthetic ideals, they definitely follow the opposite strategies to achieve them. While imagist poets tend to maximize the impact of words in images by breaking up their syntactical connection, Chinese Rishi poets seek to produce the same impact by exploiting two kinds of covert syntactic linkage inherent in the Rishi form. The first is the linkage of words within a line. Taking another look at the word-for-word translation, we can clearly see that each line consists of bisyllabic and a trisyllabic segment, as indicated by the column division. Each trisyllabic unit has a one-character word and a binom, means a two-character compound, separated by a very slight pause, as indicated by the symbol empty circle. So, instead of being a cacophony of disjointed words, each line produces a pleasurable 2+3 thematic rhythm, which can be further divided as 2 plus 1 plus 2 or 2 plus 2 plus 1. This rhythm, first firmly established in Han pentasyllabic poetry during the 3rd century, is faithfully observed in pentasyllabic regulated verse. The second is the covert linkage of words between two lines of a parallel couplet. In a Rishi poem, the two middle couplets are strictly required to be parallel in meaning as well as in parts of speech. Springsteen provides an intricate parallelism of this kind. In the second couplet, for instance, we note a neat pairing of feel and hate. Both are emotive verbs. Time and separation, both are nouns of time and space. Flowers and birds, both are nouns of natural life. Shed with startle, both are verbs of emotional response. And finally, tear and heart, both are nouns related to emotion. In the third couplet, there is a similar meticulous matching of words. These two kinds of covert syntactic linkage effectively integrates seemingly disjointed words of regulated verse into a unified and powerfully expressive whole.